Hi everyone, it's Henry here, and in this video I'm going to go through how I've created my take on the new Sanguinary Guard unit for Horus Heresy. So Games Workshop got in touch and said they were going to be putting together some rules to allow you to use this unit in your games of Age of Darkness, and would I be interested in creating a video around modelling and painting those up? It's like, yes, 100%. What a brilliant opportunity to have a go at a truly iconic unit of the game. I'm sure lots of people are familiar with the 40k guise of these, with the death masks and the wing jump packs and stuff. But the origins of the Sanguinary Guard are in the Heresy. You know, they were the honor guard of the Blood Angels Legion. You know, these were warriors that, you know, eschewed their former names, their former ranks. They took on these titles of like Seraph and stuff, and just became these exemplars, I guess, of the Legion, and just completely devoted to Sanguinius. Just really, really cool. And the challenge was, for me, how do I represent this in the Heresy era? So here's what I came up with. I hope you enjoy. Let's paint. So one of the kits that is accompanying this rules release is the new Mark 6 command box, which is this wonderful upgrade sprue of bits and bobs to help you create your command unit with. Coupled with that, Games Workshop also sent me the Armour of the Blood Angels, which is that resin upgrade set of the different Perdition Weapons, and then some of the Mark 6 heads for the Blood Angels. I also sort of dug down into my bits box for things I thought I might need for it. So I've got, say, some despoiler bits there. Then I've got the Perdition weapon off, completely forgotten his name now, the plastic character, Blood Angel Zephon, characters that came out, and then the couple of other fancy bits and bobs. So I thought, right, just surround myself with cool bits. Because one thing that was important was they needed to be in this Mark 6. They need to use the Mark 6 Assault Squad kit, but they're in Artificer armour. So I needed to figure out how can I fancy this armour up, you know, because the best of the Legion are what they're going to get. So you can see on the sprue, you get a ton of like shields and swords and stuff. But I think for me, the most exciting elements on there are the things like the two different banners that you get on there. Very different. One's more of a flag, and the other one's that kind of more Roman style, you know, leather bits and is it Vexilla? Something like that. Anyway, really cool. With 4 different toppers. And then little other bits like the sword on there that's very reminiscent of that old Stern Guard sword as well. But the helmets, as much as I love them, and I really do, I wanted to stick to Mark 6 style lids for this unit. I just felt it fitted my vision of them more. I was talking to our commissions chief, Ben, and he was like, oh, well, you need to still put some crests on them, show their authority and everything. I was like, oh, well, fair enough. Like, okay. So I was like, how do I create some transverse crests to put on these guys? So I made up a bunch of the helmets from the Mark 3 kit with the transverse crests, glued them together, and as you can see, just snipped them off to use them as bits. So it had the little stand, as it were, for the brush to go on. Then found the center of the head, drilled down, and popped it in, and it was a really effective way of making like a beautiful helmet. One thing I just wanted to say about the Perdition Weapons kit, I love the fact that the join on the wrists here is there's a different shape for the locator lug for each of the weapons, so you know which arm goes with which. Yeah, I just thought it was a really nice touch. You know, you've seen on the channel I have my ups and downs with the kits, but I thought that was really well thought out, other than the one that dropped on the floor as you just saw there. Also a nice transfer sheet in the box as well. Not all of the legions represented, unfortunately, and typically not the Blood Angels, but not a problem because I've got the 30k Blood Angels sheet. So had a good old rummage around, put things together, and in the end, this is what I came up with. So the major way that I have physically on the armour itself tried to represent that Artificer element is by the shoulder pads and the helmets. So the shoulder pads are either from the Command Squad upgrade kit. There's a few of the Mark II that you get on the vehicle upgrade sprue, plastic sprue, because they've got a nice rim on them. I think it makes it look a bit more ornate. And then the resin ones that are just coming into view there, I've taken off the Loyalist Legion Champion. Again, just a little bit fancier. And you may be going, oh, they haven't got the transverse crests on their heads that you created, Henry. And that's correct, they haven't, because once I made all those heads up, and I made up 4 of them, I went to glue them on the bodies, and of course, because of the jump packs, they don't fit. You can't move them around. So, yeah, well done. Well done, me. But I guess I've got them for if I want to create a bunch more Blood Angels commanders. But this guy I felt was particularly important, the Flagman. So if you take them as a retinue, you can take a standard in the thing. And for me, like, Warhammer's all about flags. So yeah, just try to make him look sort of as fancy, as important as possible. And the guy with the axe here, on the sprue there are 3 unhelmeted heads, and they are really great sculpts. Like, they're a proper level up from the plastic heads we've had before. So yeah, very, very impressed with that. Lovely kit to work with. So I think it'll be quite popular. I'll certainly be picking one up and swapping bits and bobs with other people, I think, to get the exact things you want off it. Would be really cool. Sub-assemblies, very simple. The shoulder pads I've left separate. I've blue tacked them onto the model, left the blue tack on there so that when I spray and stuff, I can pull it off and reveal bare plastic to glue to. And then the shoulder pads themselves, I've just put on a cocktail stick, bit of blue tack, just to paint them up, because I'm going to paint the shoulder pads red and the armour gold. I wanted to go for a different red to what I've done on my other Blood Angels, just because I just wanted to make these guys stand out as everything that they get is special, right? Is unique, or just that level above what a line trooper would get. So I kind of had this idea in my head that maybe their red armor panels are more like enameled or something like that. And in the end, I decided to use the recipe I've recently done on my Solar Auxilia, which you might have seen in a recent video. So it's 2 silvers, a dark silver and a really bright silver. The important thing there is there's a really big step between the two, because effectively it's your black and your white. It's your pre-shade. I'm always spraying about 25 psi. I'm using a 0.4mm needle and nozzle, and in this case I'm using our Harder and Steenbeck Signature Series Infinity for this job. So over the silver pre-shade, a couple of coats of Baal Red, and that is thinned about 1:1 with just normal airbrush thinner. And then once that's dry, just spraying Carroburg Crimson, which is a wash paint, a shade paint, just into the areas of shadow. And I haven't diluted that at all. That's just gone straight in the airbrush. Just a really nice combo of reds I've found, and I think I'll use them quite a lot in the future. So the thing I thought would be fun to try out with these guys was playing around with contrast paints mixed with metallics. Now, you may have seen in a recent video I did on Endrid Har. I'll put links up to these in the video. I created some different silvers using contrast paints and a silver. So in this case, I thought, I wonder if I can create some different golds using a gold and that. So I used Valdor Gold, which is an air paint I picked up a while ago. I picked it up simply because I didn't recognise it. So I grabbed it when I was in the store. And it's quite a light sort of silvery gold. So I thought that'd be actually probably quite easy to manipulate using contrast and stuff. So here I've got a mix of Goregrunta and it. And you can see here left to right, there's 1 coat, 2 coats and 3 coats. It's actually pretty significant, that difference between each one. Again, I'm still spraying same pressure, 25 psi and stuff. And I've just given the whole model 3 coats of that. So it's a nice solid finish of the gold. And then for the highlight, I'm just going to use pure Valdor on its own. I think I had to thin mine less than 1:1, so a little bit less thinner than paint. It is an airbrush formulated, paint formulated for airbrushes, so it does airbrush very nicely, which is helpful. Metallics can sometimes be a bit tricky, but this one seemed to behave. And the gold, I was deliberately wanted to go for more of a warm, reddy, browny, pinky gold, because I just thought it's different to the one I think of in my head when I think of 40k Sanguinary Guard. So I thought it was a good opportunity to do that. And for the highlights, I'm keeping it quite simplistic. I've been, as you'll have known if you've seen any of the other Blood Angels videos I've been doing, I've kind of been going for a little bit of a nostalgic kind of vibe to these. So still, weathering and battle damage and all that, but just a little bit perhaps cleaner, a little bit more. I don't know. I can't articulate the exact take, but just I don't know, a slightly brighter, I guess, style than typically I would, and I've been quite enjoying it, to be honest. So there you can see the difference with the highlight on the one on the right versus on the left. And for me, I love working with metallics. Like they do so much work for you, particularly with gaming miniatures, because of all those lovely reflections. So yeah, I was pretty excited at this point, but I wanted to just tweak the gold a little bit more. So what I've done here is given the whole model a very, very translucent layer, so a glaze or a filter, whatever you want to call it, a very heavily thinned coat of Goregrunta and Nazdreg Yellow contrast paint. This was 3 drops of Goregrunta to 1 drop of Nazdreg, so just a little bit yellow, and you can see how it's just tinted that armour to bring it perhaps more back to that sort of yellower gold, but it was still retained that nice sort of reddy gold undertones on there. So I was very, very happy with how that one has come out. And you can see me whizzing through that stage on the rest of them. I use my airbrush cleaning pot to check the consistency of paint before I spray on it, and I just thought it looked kind of cool after doing all that gold. When you consider that there's only really a very bland gold paint in there and the rest is all contrasts, kind of looks like a bear with eyelashes. But yeah, I just thought it was interesting, so I've obviously stuck it in the thing. Right, for the flag, for the banner, I had just tacked it on with super glue initially to get the armour colour on, so then I just snapped that off, and now I'm going to mask up the arms so that I can airbrush the banner. All of this painting is done with, in my opinion, army painting in mind. So fairly simple stages, nothing really requiring more than perhaps 3 steps, and using tools like the airbrush to accomplish that in a timely fashion. So I can get them on the table and get playing with them, but also just not get bored too. So very simple. I've just gone black all over the banner, and then I'm going to give a spray from effectively the top down using Eshin Grey, and I've thinned that about, I don't know, 3 drops of thinner to paint, something like that. It's basically so it gets to the consistency where it sprays out, it looks on the camera. I use these numbers and things I give you as a guideline, and then adjust from there, because everyone's setup is slightly different, whether that's the brush, the compressor, the actual atmosphere that you're working in. And just sort of work from there. Now, other than using the moulded shoulder pads, or the different styles, rather, I should say, of shoulder pads and those lovely resin helmets to represent the Artificer armour, I also really wanted to do some decal work on these to tart that armour up and just make it look fancier. But also the banner itself offered a great opportunity to use these. On a lot of the Horus Heresy transfer sheets, you get a couple of banner designs. There's this lovely one on the Blood Angels one. I thought, oh, there we go, that'll be spot on for this. And looking at the one that the heavy metal guys have done, I think they've used it, but I couldn't get it to work. I would consider myself very experienced with transfers, and I just couldn't get it to line up right and stuff on the banner, which was a shame. But I've left the footage in for it because I wanted to show that, providing you're gentle when you work with them and you use plenty of your decal fluid, I like to use Microset and Microsol. It allows you to manipulate them an awful lot before they, disintegrate and all the rest of it. Generally, the best tips I can give is to have a really nice gloss coat underneath, so they've got a real heavy coat of polyurethane gloss I've used. In this case, that's just the gloss I like to use in my airbrush. And then flood that surface with the Microset and use it. And when I decided I couldn't use it for that, I've just put it back on the piece of card that I stuck it from on the transfer sheet, and I'll allow that to dry, and then I can just use that in the future on something else if I want to. So it's not ruined the transfer at all. Also noticed that the Blood Angels, the majority of the transfers on that sheet are pre-cut, so I didn't need to cut around them. I could just cut a square and they come out. I haven't noticed that on many of the transfer sheets. So yeah, I just basically had to create my own flag design, and thankfully the Blood Angels sheet is full of lovely ornate artsy things to do. So yeah, lots of Microset back on the surface, glossy surface, so there's very low surface tension. It's very easy to move things around, and the best tip I can give really is always try to pull the transfer to where you want it to go rather than push it. I find that tends to prevent it tearing and stuff like that. And then I'm using a little cotton bud there just to press out any little air pockets that might be underneath, because you don't want those in there when it's drying. Then I've let that evaporate off, just the microset, and now I'm reapplying it so I can start layering up the decals on top of each other. Because I've let the previous coat dry, this little bit here is not going to reactivate that previous transfer enough to cause me any problems, but it will allow me to manipulate this bit I'm adding on here now. And say just sort of get it roughly where you want it, and then very gentle, just pressing gently against there with my tweezers, and I can just slowly, incrementally move it to where I want it. And yeah, just being gentle, lots of microset, lots of small movements, not trying to do anything in a oneer, I find is the sort of the best way to get the results that I like from the transfers. And then I just went to town really on the armour. I just lobbed loads of transfers on there just to try and make them look fancy. I really liked how the gold transfers looked against this gold armour as well, because it was different enough. And in some of the cases you can't see it from say 3 foot away, but as you get a little bit closer to the model you might see it, and it kind of just looks like this lovely sort of faded gold, sort of filigree and stuff. Really enjoyed that stage. So I'll put the link up in the top about the full decal process. But then once everything was dry, I gave the models a coat of 50/50 matte and ultra matte varnish. And this is because that's the finish I'm going for with this Blood Angels collection. Although it's matte and ultra matte, it's still kind of a satin finish, which is nice. So it doesn't completely kill the metallics, which is important. But it also makes them a little bit easier to look at, because obviously when I'm filming a lot of stuff as well, or showing things in photos, metallics are notoriously tricky. Because of all that reflection from the light. And here I'm just going back in with just diluted Goregrunta Fur, just into any of the shadow areas that I felt had needed just a little bit of sort of pumping up, a bit more vibrancy, just bring that red back in there. Then it was a case of blacking out the very few areas on the model that were either going to be black or silver. Our Commission Chief Ben always screams at me for doing this as a step. He thinks it's superfluous. I like doing it because it helps me break the model up and understand kind of where I'm going to work on the next stages. And I genuinely think it makes a difference with the sort of separation around other colours, particularly because I don't tend to use very strong washes to create that definition. It's just not the style typically in which I paint. Then for the sort of leather wraps and handles and things on the weapons and the tassels and stuff on the banner, I just thought a nice kind of burgundy type colour would look pretty cool next to it. So I've used Vorbak as a base, then Screamer Pink, and then I'm going to highlight that up, adding in a little bit of Genestealer Purple. I tried just using white and it just went a bit too pink, and I found the Genestealer Purple just kept it still slightly more in that burgundy. I don't know, maybe I've been watching or looking at some of Andy's stuff and it sort of, percolated in my brain, because he loves using those sorts of colours, doesn't he, and violets and things like that. So maybe that's what it was. But I actually thought it worked very nicely next to it. Now, one of the decisions I made was how, I say, obviously tarting the armour up, making it look fancy. But typically I leave off, if there's an option to leave off pouches and bling and stuff on a miniature, I will. I like the cleaner look, and it's quicker to paint. But there's this amazing bit of artwork of Ascalon, a guy on the right here. So he was the commander of the Sanguinary Guard. He was one of the last survivors. He goes on to effectively save the Legion when Sanguinius dies. And I noted on here he had his pistol holstered on his hip, and I really liked that just additional little bit of colour the brown leather brought into the scheme. And whilst I haven't by any means copied the colours on him, as you can tell, I did like that additional splash of colour, just to break things up a little bit on there. So I've gone back to a tried and tested recipe for myself for leather, and that is base coating it using Thondia Brown, couple of layers of slightly thinned down Thondia Brown paint to start with. And then I mix in some Mournfang to that, and just begin highlighting it. Lots of little scritches and scratches, and sort of working on the edges, just thinking where leather tends to get worn and torn. If you've got any sort of old leather boots or leather wallet, something like that, they're really fantastic references. And then I mixed in a little Baneblade Brown to that, just to highlight it up a little touch further. And then I did go in here using a bit of black brown mix just on my palette, just to bring back some of the deepest shadows again, so to add a little bit more of that definition and separation in. And this is something I kind of periodically do on my miniatures, and I think I ought to be doing it more, because as I mentioned before, when I use washes, they don't necessarily tend to be that heavy, so they don't tend to bring that definition out as much. So I think maybe it's something I need to consider, certainly on my character pieces and things like that. I think would be worth it. Then speaking of tried and tested, gone for Iron Warriors, one of my favourite sort of base silvers, just for the the exhausts and bits and bobs like that, and then a wash of Ratling Grime. Ratling Grime's a contrast paint. I make it up into a wash simply by adding water to it on my wet palette, so it behaves less like a contrast paint and more like a wash, but it is still very strong, so it does dull that metal right the way down. And as if dropping the miniature or making a load of heads that didn't fit wasn't enough, my next mistake, I thought, right, great, let's do something different for the gold on the other elements of the model, different to the armour. That'd be wicked. So I thought, right, let's mix up some more, so get my contrast paints out. And here I got out Sigor Brown, mixed that into the Valdor, and started doing this. I was like, oh my goodness, this is a really beautiful colour. And then I discovered I'd essentially just created Screaming Bell. So if you like this colour, just base coat it Screaming Bell. And then I've given it a wash of Guilliman and Flesh, again, to pink it up. So I really, really like the idea of sort of doing rose gold on these weapons. And then highlighted it using Runelord Brass. I really like Runelord Brass as a highlight colour for gold. I just like it as a paint. It's one of the white-topped metallics, and I found that the metallic paints from GW with the white lids seem to be really, really decent. So I will often use those, or I'll have a look at them if they've got a white top on them. What are we on to next? Yeah, more gold. So again, this was an opportunity to put some different gold on there. I thought, okay, let's go for a more green gold on the banner. So I've used Decayed Metal here. Again, one of my sort of go-tos as a base. And I didn't think I'd left any footage into this. The trim on the banner, I've just used the same reds that I have used to paint the armour on my normal Blood Angels. So it's Mephiston Red highlighted with Wildrider Red. It's just nice to bring in a bit of that, that harmony, I think, across an army. Back to the gold now. Not sure why I left that clip in. And then I gave it a wash that was a mix of Agrax Earthshade and a little drop of Dark Angel's Green contrast paint, so sort of green-brown. So just to make this look like a different type of gold. I don't know whether it's worked all in all, to be absolutely honest with you, but I enjoyed doing it and having those different sort of colours of gold on there. And I think for me, that's half the battle, is just ensuring that I try to enjoy every stage of a paint job. And then I've used whatever it was that flashed up on the screen. It's another, is it Skull Crusher? No, Gehenna's Gold, I think it was, this one. And I've deliberately dry brushed this on because I wanted it, again, to give it that sort of scratchy old gold worn. These are ancient standards even during the heresy that these guys are wielding very often. Incredibly important for the Legion. And then I just wanted to knock back the image on the banner a touch, so I've just loaded up some Seraphim Sepia undiluted into my airbrush. I'm just doing a few glazes of that, just to try and age up that image a little bit, because I'm not going to town on the battle damage and the weathering on these. I haven't done it with the other stuff for them. So just wanted to see how I could sort of fairly subtly change things. For the black trim on the shoulder pads, just a simple light grey chip. This was the Eshin Grey that was on my palette from using it earlier with a bit of white mixed in. That's all it is, and I'm just doing some little tippy-tappy chips along those edges, so to act a bit like an edge highlight, but also, again, just to suggest a little element of that wear and tear on the model without going all in on it. Really glad I picked these types of shoulder pads. It definitely added what I wanted. It was that this is Mark 6, but this isn't your typical Mark 6. And I particularly like it on this dude because I think he's kind of brutal, this guy. I thought that fitted quite well. There are quite a few gems on these miniatures. I didn't want to spend too long on them, so I went for that very classic way of painting. So they've just based them in the Mephiston Red and then a little highlight using the Wildrider. So again, those colours that I used on the normal armour of the other Marines. You just follow the shape, pick one side of the drop and just essentially follow the shape of that down the one side. When it was dry, I gave it a very, very diluted glaze of Baal Red, just to pump the colour up a little bit. Make sure it's very, very diluted on your palette, this, because it's an incredibly powerful colour, Baal Red. Now, for the Perdition weapons, at the moment, I'm enjoying blades that look like they're just made of steel, rather than coloured power weapons. But I have followed the exact same process in our power weapons tutorial, so I will link that up at the top, so you can have a sort of a much longer dedicated video to this technique. But all I've done is used a dark silver and a light silver, and then done exactly what we do in that video. So drawn one end of the blade towards the light, the other end towards the dark, and just glazed it in different directions. So nearly there now with the miniatures, and I know this is a long video, guys. I'm really sorry. I didn't know it was going to be this long, but it's just been for miniatures that don't have a lot on them, a lot of different parts to them. It seems to have taken a while to talk about. So I hope you don't mind too much. But I wanted to use an oil wash, and for this I'm using Sepia. So I've mixed this oil paint with some normal mineral spirits, so that's white spirits over here in the UK, up into a fairly thick wash. So you can see here on the thing, I would say that is slightly thicker than your normal acrylic wash. And I'm going to apply this all over the silver parts and then into all the recesses on the gold parts. There's no need to varnish beforehand this. The surface tension is still fairly low on these models. And the capillary action, therefore, by using the solvent-based oil wash, they'll flow into the recess is absolutely fine. And because all the paint is dry, there's not going to be any reaction. You don't need to worry about protecting paint from white spirits and stuff. As long as your acrylic paint is dry, you're not going to have anything untoward occur. But yeah, I mean, I'm sure if you've watched any of my other videos, this is one of my favourite things to do. It just brings the miniatures to life for me. So yeah, I've used Sepia, two reasons. One, it's what I've used on the other Blood Angels, but even if I hadn't done them, I'd have used Sepia because it is a dark, dark brown, and it will give me that little bit more definition in those panel lines, which I think are very much needed. There's an account, Migs, if I remember, I'll try and link it down the bottom, who has an amazing take on gold, but it's kind of to lean into that gold thing. Here I was still sort of wanting to try and tone it down a touch, I guess. But yeah, he's done some amazing Blood Angels. I've loved that account for many, many years, since before Cole, actually. Yeah, really cool one to follow. And here I'm just going in once that oil wash is dried. I haven't varnished or anything like that. You don't need to. As long as it's dry, you're not going to get any interactions. And I'm just doing a couple of little edge highlights on the edges of the armour there with the Valdor Gold, just to bring back a little bit of that shine to the miniatures. And that was more or less the finished paint job. Now, I was very conscious of the time already on this video, so the bases I have done in exactly the same way as my Solar Auxilia, so I will post the link up to them in the top. And the eye lenses I've done exactly the same way on the normal infantry I did a few weeks ago as well, so I will link up to those as well, just to try and keep the time fairly reasonable on this video. Yeah, I mean, I think they're really cool. I'm not going to lie. I'm really satisfied with how these came out. They look special. They look different. I think if you saw them on the table, I don't mean that like in the grand scheme of things. I mean in the context of the army. I think if you saw them on the table, you'd go, "Oh, what's that unit? They must be, what's the deal with these guys?" And I really like the fact that, again, no element of them is really more than, say, 3 steps, which I think for me is just key when we're army painting, even for your special, your special units. And a lot of it really just came in the planning, really. I think I say I wanted that warm gold. I didn't quite know how it would end up, if I'm being absolutely honest with you. I was kind of making it up on the fly as I was painting it. I had a little tester model off to the side, but I was just sort of tweaking as I went, and just hit upon something I really liked the look of very, very, very early on with it. So, yeah, Blood Angels. I'm not sure if I'm accidentally painting a Blood Angels army at the moment. I certainly didn't have any intentions of doing it, and I'm not a big Blood Angels fanboy or anything like that. So, yeah, not quite sure what's going on, but there's definitely creeping up as a collection. So, yeah, I don't know if maybe we need to revisit something to do with that later. I tell you what, another account, when I mentioned Migs, a buddy of mine, Steve, Greek Geek 75. Again, I'll pop it down in the description. Absolute, like, Blood Angels fanatic, has a phenomenal Horus Heresy Blood Angels army, enormous collection. So if you fancy going and sort of ogling that, I'll stick that link down in the description. Really, really, really wonderful. I'm looking forward to seeing what he does when he gets his hands on these. I've been dying to tell him that this unit's coming. So yeah, here you go, Steve. I hope you're happy, bud. Yeah, I think it'd be wicked. So yeah, I mean, what did I learn? What did I learn doing all of this? That absolutely contrast paints mixed in with metallics is a really fun way to create some different metallics if you enjoy working with metallics. Obviously you can put them over the silver with your brush, but I particularly like mixing them in to create it, as it were, with this. Yeah, I don't know. I think I've covered everything on this one, guys. Just kind of tailing out. I hope you're enjoying the heresy content. There's a bit more to come as well before I suspect what will be a summer of fantastical things, given the releases that we're seeing at the moment. If you've got any questions about any of the kits that I've used or the paint job itself, as always, pop them down in the comments and I will get back to you as soon as I can. Those of you that support us on Patreon, absolute legends. We massively appreciate that. And those of you that support us over on here with your likes and your subscribes and your comments, you make a huge, huge difference to us, and we really, really appreciate it all. And I hope you enjoy the content that we're putting out for you guys. So yeah, I will see you next week for some more heresy goodness. Take care. I'll see you next time. If you've liked any of the models in this video and you fancy having an army of them yourself, but perhaps you don't have the time or wherewithal to get it done, consider dropping us an email at commissions@cultofpaint.com and maybe Ben can sort you out.